Hey man, nervousness around women doesn't come from lack of confidence the way most people think. It comes from misplaced focus. The moment you step into an interaction worrying about how you're being perceived, your nervous system shifts into performance mode. You're no longer present. You're monitoring yourself, editing your words, predicting reactions, and bracing for judgment. That internal split between who you are and who you're trying to appear as is what creates tension. The goal isn't to be confident. The goal is to return to center, and that's where the ACE rule begins. Most men try to fix nervousness by adding something: more lines, more tactics, more bravado. But the ACE rule works by removing the causes of anxiety rather than masking them. It's not about hype or self-talk. It's about aligning your body, attention, and expectations so your system naturally relaxes. When those three elements are in sync, calm isn't something you force. It's something that shows up on its own. The first part of the ACE rule is anchoring. Nervousness lives in the future. Imagine rejection, imagine failure, imagine embarrassment. Anchoring brings you back into the present moment. That means shifting attention out of your head and into your body. Your breath, your feet on the ground, the sensation of standing upright. When your awareness drops into the body, your nervous system receives a signal. There is no immediate threat. This alone dissolves a massive amount of anxiety before you even speak. Most men don't realize how disconnected they are from their physical presence when they're nervous. They're floating in thoughts, scanning for danger. Anchoring interrupts that loop. It's not meditation, it's embodiment. When you feel your breath slow and your posture settle, your voice naturally deepens, your movements become deliberate, and your eye contact stabilizes. You don't try to look calm. Calm expresses itself through you. The second part is curiosity. Nervous men are self-focused. They're thinking, do I look stupid? Am I saying the right thing? What does she think of me? That internal spotlight creates pressure. Curiosity flips the spotlight outward. Instead of worrying about impressing, you become genuinely interested in observing her tone, her expressions, the rhythm of the interaction. Curiosity replaces self-consciousness with engagement. When curiosity is active, you stop performing, you stop rehearsing lines, you stop chasing outcomes, you listen without agenda. That relaxed attention creates ease, not just for you, but for her as well. People feel comfortable around someone who isn't trying to extract validation from them. Curiosity makes the interaction feel light, human, and unforced. The third part of the ACE rule is expectationlessness. This is the hardest one for most men, because expectations are what feed nervousness the most. The moment you want a specific outcome, approval, attraction, interest, you introduce risk. And where there is perceived risk, anxiety follows. Expectationlessness doesn't mean apathy. It means you're open to connection without being attached to results. When you drop expectations, your energy shifts dramatically. You're no longer trying to get somewhere. You're simply present where you are. That presence removes urgency. Urgency is what makes words stumble, voices shake, and minds race. Without urgency, your natural personality surfaces. You become slower, clearer, and more grounded. Not because you forced it, but because nothing inside you is rushing. Here's the key thing most men miss. Women don't respond to confidence the way movies portray it. They respond to emotional regulation. A man who can stay relaxed, attentive, and centered, even in uncertainty, feels safe and grounded. The ACE rule creates that state organically. Anchoring settles your body. Curiosity frees your attention. Expectationlessness removes pressure. Together, they form a calm internal loop that replaces nervousness entirely. Once you experience this shift, you realize something important. Nervousness was never a personality flaw. It was a signal that your attention was misaligned. When you correct that alignment, calm becomes your default state. You stop trying to be confident around girls and instead become a man who is simply present with people. And presence, when it's grounded and relaxed, is far more powerful than confidence ever was. Once anchoring, curiosity and expectationlessness start working together, something subtle but powerful changes inside you. Your mind stops racing ahead, your body stops bracing for impact, and your emotions stop spiking unnecessarily. You're no longer preparing for judgment because you're no longer placing yourself on trial. Instead of trying to get it right, you're simply allowing the interaction to exist. This removes the invisible pressure that used to sit in your chest, tightening your breath and stiffening your movements. Calmness stops being an act and becomes your baseline. What most men don't realize is that nervousness is often self-created through internal narration. They comment on everything they do in real time, how they look, how they sound, how they're being perceived. The ACE rule shuts down that narration by redirecting attention. When your awareness is anchored in your body, curious about the moment, and free from expectation, there's no mental space left for self-judgment. The inner voice that once sabotaged you goes quiet because it no longer has fuel. This shift immediately affects how you move and speak. Your gestures slow down. Your voice steadies. You stop rushing words to avoid silence. Silence becomes neutral instead of threatening. When you pause before speaking, it no longer feels awkward. It feels natural. That pause gives your words weight. People lean in slightly when someone speaks from calm rather than from anxiety. You don't need to be loud or witty. You need to be grounded. Women in particular respond strongly to this kind of presence, not because it's impressive, but because it feels regulating. Human nervous systems mirror each other. When you're calm, the interaction calms. When you're settled, the space becomes easier to exist in. She doesn't feel pressured to perform, impress, or reassure you. And that absence of pressure makes the interaction smoother on both sides. Another thing that changes is how you handle mistakes. When you're nervous, a small stumble feels catastrophic. You replay it, analyze it, and spiral. Under the ACE framework, mistakes lose their emotional charge. A pause, a misworded sentence, or a moment of uncertainty doesn't define the interaction anymore. You simply move forward. That resilience is far more attractive than flawless delivery. Over time, you begin to notice that situations which once triggered anxiety no longer do. Walking up to someone, holding eye contact, starting a conversation, these stop feeling like tests and start feeling like ordinary human moments. Not because you force confidence, but because you remove the internal conflict that created fear in the first place. Expectationlessness also protects you from disappointment. When you're open but unattached, outcomes stop defining your self-worth. If a conversation flows, you enjoy it. If it doesn't, you move on without internal collapse. That emotional independence builds quiet confidence, not the loud kind, but the kind that doesn't need to announce itself. As this becomes your default, people begin responding differently to you. Conversations feel easier, reactions feel warmer, there's less resistance, not because you changed who you are, but because you stopped interfering with yourself. When anxiety drops, authenticity rises, and authenticity creates connection. The ACE rule also teaches you something deeper. Calmness is a skill, not a trait. It's something you practice through attention, not something you wait to feel. Each time you anchor, get curious, and release expectations, you reinforce a nervous system pattern of ease. Over time, that pattern becomes automatic. At this point, nervousness doesn't disappear completely. It loses control. It may show up briefly, but it no longer runs the interaction. You recognize it, anchor back into the body, redirect attention outward, and let go of outcomes. Calm returns quickly, and once you experience that level of internal control, you realize you were never broken, you were just misdirected. What ultimately changes when you live by the ACE rule isn't just how you feel in interactions, it's how you see yourself inside them. You stop entering moments hoping to be accepted and start entering them already grounded in self-acceptance. That inner shift is everything. When you're no longer seeking permission to exist comfortably in someone else's presence, your nervous system stops interpreting social situations as threats. You don't brace yourself anymore. You don't armor up. You simply show up as you are. And that authenticity is what people respond to most naturally. Over time, this creates a quiet confidence that isn't tied to success or failure. You're no longer confident because things went well. You're calm regardless of how things go. This makes you resilient. Rejection doesn't sting the same way. Awkward moments don't linger. You recover instantly because nothing about the interaction defines your worth. That emotional independence is what most people mistake for charisma, when in reality, it's just self-regulation. You also begin to notice that women treat you differently without you changing anything externally. Conversations feel more balanced. Eye contact lasts longer. There's less testing, less tension, less resistance. Not because you're trying harder, but because you're no longer transmitting anxiety. Calm presence invites openness. When someone feels safe around you, attraction has room to grow naturally. The real power of the ACE rule is that it's repeatable. It doesn't depend on mood, confidence levels, or perfect circumstances. You can use it anywhere. Conversations, dates, social settings, even high-pressure moments. Anchor into the body. Shift attention outward with curiosity. Release attachment to outcomes. Every time you do this, you reinforce a pattern of calm authority that becomes part of who you are. So understand this clearly, brother. Nervousness was never something you needed to eliminate. It was something you needed to understand. Once you stop fighting it and start redirecting your attention with intention, calm becomes your default state. You don't need to act confident. You don't need to impress. You don't need to perform. You simply remain present, grounded, and unattached. And from that place, everything, including attraction, flows naturally.